Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host Louis Sung, and today we're talking about the Miami Dolphins running back position again. Now you may be wondering, now that Dalvin Cook is signed with the New York Jets, I figured that we were done with this whole discussion, that the Miami Dolphins running backs who they were. That Raheem Mostert was going to be the starter, Devon Achane was going to be the guy that they were going to count on later down the line to be more of a gimmick at first, and then maybe eventually he'll grow into a more regular role, and Jeff Wilson was going to be the change of pace back, and then maybe you'll toss in Savon Ahmed somewhere in there just to keep things fresh, because it's a stable of running backs that the Dolphins have at their possession. But no, we're here again, and we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins potentially trading for Indianapolis Colts superstar Jonathan Taylor. So I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on this whole discussion. I will give what it is that I think the Dolphins should do at this point. And I'm not going to lie, guys. It's not going to be as optimistic as it was with the whole Dalvin Cook thing, and I will explain why. But before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to You Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the now new look revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 players across professional sports leagues. It can be from any league you want, the NFL, the NBA, the MLB. You can choose them from different leagues. You can choose them from the same league. It's all up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. And right now, PrizePicks actually has a whole bunch of offers going on all at the same time. In celebration of their new look, their new logo, they're actually giving you a free square of Dak Prescott. So if he throws at least 1 yard on his debut game September 10th, then you will automatically win that square, and you just have to pick 2, 3, 4 other players and you can win some big time cash. They're giving you Dak Prescott for free. And also today happens to be Taco Tuesday, which means you're also going to get some discounted props that you can take advantage of. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for that. And if you even that doesn't do it for you, they also have on Friday Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you are any kind of a fantasy sports fan at this point. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, this promo code 5, FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. Alrighty, folks, so let me go ahead and just explain myself real quick here, because you would think with all this time that I've spent hyping up Dalvin Cook, that I want Dalvin Cook, I want to be greedy, I want to have the ultimate luxury signing of getting a Pro Bowl running back on the Miami Dolphins in the hopes that the running game will be even further bolstered and that the Dolphins will have a better run at the Super Bowl than ever before. So why, in God's name, would I decide that all of a sudden Jonathan Taylor becomes available in trade from the Indianapolis Colts, and Jonathan Taylor is actually younger than Dalvin Cook? He's already proven to be a top 3 running back in this whole league when he's healthy. Why would I suddenly decide that the Miami Dolphins don't need anything to do with Jonathan Taylor? You would think that, logically speaking, I would be all over this in hopes that the Dolphins would go ahead and manage to get somebody like a Jonathan Taylor, another elite talent for an elite level team. Well, there's a very simple explanation for that. First of all, just ignoring everything else, I will go into the logical reasons as to why the Dolphins should not, based on who they already have, in a moment. But the ultimate reason for me is, with the Dalvin Cook thing, the Dolphins had to give up a total of 0 assets in order to sign Dalvin Cook. The only thing standing in the way of the Miami Dolphins signing Dalvin Cook was the Miami Dolphins and Dalvin Cook. There was one guy in between, an agent, who was basically saying, no, that's not enough money. And Dalvin Cook was also there saying, no, thank you, that's not enough money. And that's the only reason he did not sign with the Dolphins, is because the Dolphins did not offer him the amount of money that the New York Jets ultimately offered. He took the money and ran. And that was the only thing standing in the way of Dalvin Cook being a Dolphin. There was no other factors involved in that whatsoever. But with the Jonathan Taylor thing, all of a sudden, everything gets a lot muddier. Jonathan Taylor is under contract with the Indianapolis Colts. Granted, he's pissed off at the Colts, and Jim Irsay said some really stupid things not too long ago, basically saying that, you know what, nobody's going to miss Jonathan Taylor in the grand scheme of life. Like, why is he trying to get so deep here? It's not that big a deal. So I will go ahead and just say this. If the Dolphins were somehow actually seriously, and I mean seriously, looking into this Jonathan Taylor trade, I would question what their priorities were at this point. Because if you just want to win one Super Bowl and that's the end of the discussion, okay, fine. You go and get Jonathan Taylor, you go ahead but get ready, because you're going to have to pay him, because that's the entire point of why he's upset with the Indianapolis Colts at this point. He wants more money, and the Colts are not going to give it to him. So he's being allowed to seek a trade and basically say, look, we're not going to pay you. If somebody else is willing to pay you, we'll go ahead and good luck, because they're going to have to give us a boatload of picks before we let you go. So now the ball is in Jonathan Taylor's court. Is he going to look for a team that's willing to pay him? And if that team is out there, is it going to be the Miami Dolphins? My first instinct, quite honestly, would be no. Because think of it this way. If the Dolphins were not willing to sign Dalvin Cook to an $8 million deal, and that was with zero assets given up. Zero. No draft picks would have had to be lost in this whole transaction. And the Dolphins ultimately said, no, thank you. We don't want to pay you that much. Now, Jonathan Taylor is going to be looking for a new team that is willing to pay him. And I understand he's a lot younger. He's 24 years old. He's got a lot of good stuff on his resume. I can go ahead and pull up his stats, and I'm sure that his numbers are going to be absolutely fantastic. In 2021, 332 rushing attempts, 1,811 yards rushing. But then in 2022, he only had 192 rushing attempts and 861 yards. And I use the term only loosely, because 861 yards, again, is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. That's a very, very good number for an excellent running back. The only reason he didn't get more than that was simply because he ended up getting hurt and he wasn't able to be the entirety of who he normally is. So what do the Dolphins do now? You see that this guy is available. You see how impressive he can be. Again, 24 years old, and he will not be 25 until this upcoming January. This kid is stellar. I can easily admit that. But the Miami Dolphins would have to give them, the Indianapolis Colts, a butt-ton of assets. You would have to give up a lot. A first-round equivalent is what the Indianapolis Colts are looking for, according to reports. Reports are saying that if the Indianapolis Colts are going to give up Jonathan Taylor, they want the equivalent of a first-round draft pick and then some. So that would mean that if I'm the Miami Dolphins, not only do I have to pay up to give Jonathan Taylor a brand new contract, which quite frankly, I don't know where they would get the money, because even as we speak, they don't even have the money to sign Christian Wilkins, who's having a little minor sit-in saying, hey, you guys need to pay me already. I was willing to play ball for a little while, but you guys are neglecting me. That's what it looks like from an outside looking in perspective. So now the Dolphins are currently in negotiations with Christian Wilkins. Mike McDaniel said as such that they are in negotiations with Christian Wilkins. And ultimately, I feel like Chris Grier is going to have to cave in, because you cannot afford to lose out on Christian Wilkins at this point. He is the heart and soul of that defense. He is a leader. He is somebody that everybody looks up to. And he manages to get this defense functioning in a way that just cannot be dismissed. He makes it so that everybody else can do their job better. You thought you were impressed with the goal line stand that the Dolphins defense had against the Houston Texans in the preseason? That was without Christian Wilkins. Zach Sealer was in there. Bradley Chubb was in there. Jalen Phillips was in there. But there was no Christian Wilkins. Could you imagine how much better it would be with Christian Wilkins in there, just causing chaos? CJ Stroud probably would not have known what to do with himself at that point. So now you have Christian Wilkins looking for a new contract. And yet we're going around here looking around for ways, how can we fit in Jonathan Taylor? How can we make this Jonathan Taylor trade happen? Guys, I don't want Jonathan Taylor anymore. I don't. If you had told me that Jonathan Taylor was being released by the Indianapolis Colts, cut off into the free agent market, then I would go ahead and say, okay, yeah, absolutely. Let's take a really long, hard look at how we can make Jonathan Taylor a Miami Dolphin. But I do not want to trade a whole bunch of assets just to get my hands on a running back who, by the way, is still injured, number one. And number two, is going to demand more money than any running back we have probably seen in the past 5 years, at least. So with all of those factors in mind, are you really going to go ahead and give up one of your premier core players? Probably because either this year or next year. Like, there are some people saying, oh, well, maybe we can trade Christian Wilkins and a second-round draft pick, and maybe that'll be enough for the Indianapolis Colts. Are you crazy? You're going to trade Christian Wilkins for a running back who is still injured and can't even play? Christian Wilkins is like the Iron Man of the Dolphins defense. He's almost never off the field. And you're going to go and get a guy who is even now cannot play because he is not physically ready to do so. Never mind the fact that he's all ticked off. He can't play yet. So how do you know when he's going to be available? Like, you were talking about Dalvin Cook being injury prone. Jonathan Taylor? I'm sorry. Like, the kid's already 24 years old, and already we're looking at him like, okay, when are you going to hit the field again? That's an issue for me. That's issue number one. Point number two, and this is where it really boils down to just looking at what the Dolphins already have here. Just as a little reminder for everybody, the Houston Texans, I was actually with Fins Nation yesterday with my good friend Chris Early, and I believe the number that he pointed out was that before their loss to the Miami Dolphins offense, the Houston Texans beat the New England Patriots 20-9. And in that game, and I understand that it was mostly almost all backups playing in that game, but that goes on both sides. It's not just the backups on offense, it's the backups on defense too. So the Houston Texans backups versus the New England Patriots backups held the New England Patriots to, I'm just going to do some math here, Malik Cunningham, 5 carries, 34 yards, so 34 yards. Then Pierre Strong Jr., 6 carries, 21 yards. So 34 plus 21, that's already 55 yards. Kevin Harris got 10 yards, so that's 65. Bailey Zappi got 6 yards, so that's 71. J.J. Taylor, which is 75 yards, that's a 4-yard earning, so that's 75. And then Trace McSorley, so that's 78. 78 total rushing yards for the entire game for the New England Patriots versus the Houston Texans defense. Okay, fine. I get it. All backups. But backups versus backups, it's an equal playing field. And the New England Patriots offense, they like to run the ball sometimes. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the Miami Dolphins. What did the Dolphins do against this vaunted Houston Texans defense that had just held the New England Patriots to 78 yards rushing? Forget 78 yards rushing total. Let me remind you all of what the numbers were. The top rusher for the team was Savon Ahmed, a backup running back. He got 12 carries, 99 yards, averaging 8.2 yards a carry. Christopher Brooks, who is also majorly a backup. He's on the roster bubble. He probably won't even make the team. He'll probably get practice squatted if he clears waivers. 11 carries, 47 yards, and showed himself to be a real bruiser. Raheem Mostert, the actual starter for the team, 6 carries, 30 yards, and a touchdown. Devon Achane, 6 carries, 27 yards before his shoulder injury, which hopefully, by the way, will not take too long for him to get back. And I don't even count Skylar Thompson at this point. 3 carries, 2 yards. 2 of those, as Duke pointed out yesterday, those were just kneel downs, so that doesn't even count as a carry. So you take all those numbers. The Miami Dolphins ran for almost 200 yards rushing in a preseason game against the Houston Texans. And again, it was basically equal playing field. They were mostly starters when the Dolphins starters were on offense, and by the time it was back down to the backups, most of the backups had been entered, so it was an equal playing field the entire time. And we're talking about Jonathan Taylor like the Dolphins have no rushing game to speak of. We saw what Raheem Mostert was doing when he was on the field. He averaged 5 yards a carry. He was very solid. And other teams, as long as there is a commitment to the running game, will have no choice but to respect the fact that if the Dolphins decide they want to run the football, they absolutely 100% can. Because this was before we even pinned down who the starting left guard was. This is before Teron Armstead was actually part of the offensive line. We had Kendall Lamb out there as the left tackle for the Dolphins during that game. And he was solid. He was good. He was everything we needed him to be. He was good enough to get the job done. And the Dolphins ran roughshod all over the Houston Texans. So if that is what they've been seeing in practice day in and day out, it makes complete and total sense why they would not suddenly have this intense need to sign Dalvin Cook to a big contract. They have the money that they have, they're going to need to sign their own players. They need to get their hands on Christian Wilkins' new contract. They need to decide how they are going to extend Connor Williams, because if they decide to let Connor Williams walk, that's another hole in the offensive line that I don't think the Dolphins want to try to open up again. I don't think they want to do that again. And I would hope that they're smart enough to realize that once they find a good offensive lineman, they need to hang on to him, because their track record with linemen has been spotty at best. And when they do find a good one, they usually end up getting hurt. So they can't afford to lose a good one. So that's the real story here with the Miami Dolphins and the running back situation. The running backs the Dolphins have on the roster already are more than good enough to get the job done. They're more than good enough. You don't need Jonathan Taylor. You don't need to give up a first-round draft pick plus in order to get your hands on an injured running back who is already grouchy because he's not getting paid enough. Once again, I reemphasize this. If you trade for Jonathan Taylor, it comes with the proviso that you are going to pay him in the offseason. There are some people making the speculation that you could probably sell Jonathan Taylor on this whole idea of, oh, well, come to Miami, win a Super Bowl ring, and then when you become a free agent, you can go test yourself on the open market. I really don't think that he's going to go for that. I think he wants to get paid, and he wants to get paid right now. There is another factor here to consider in favor of Jonathan Taylor going to the Miami Dolphins. As it turns out, Jonathan Taylor's agent, Malky Kawa, is actually a confirmed Miami Dolphins fan. So, in a very Drew Rosenhaus-like way, the Miami Dolphins actually have someone in their corner who will probably try to steer his client, Jonathan Taylor, towards trying to become a Miami Dolphin. So they do have that in their corner if they really wanted to try to do this, which, again, I am skeptical of based on how much would have to be given up in order to do this. But I digress. Malky Kawa talks about Mike McDaniel all the time. He constantly is liking tweets about Jonathan Taylor to the Miami Dolphins, and pretty much only to the Miami Dolphins, I might add. There are other teams who are all looking at Jonathan Taylor like, oh, you're on my team now. You're a Bear. You're a Commander. You're a this. And the only ones that are getting liked by Malky Kawa, again, Jonathan Taylor's agent, Malky Kawa, and I hope I'm saying it right. The only ones that he's liking are the ones that have Jonathan Taylor going to the Dolphins. So there's obviously a vested interest in Jonathan Taylor going to Miami from Jonathan Taylor's agent. Constantly talking about Mike McDaniel. There's probably some connection there. I don't know. But it's obvious that Malky Kawa admires Mike McDaniel. He admires the Miami Dolphins because he's a fan of the team. So, of course, he would want Jonathan Taylor to go to Miami. But how would the Dolphins even pull this off? Already the Dolphins are going to be in a major financial hole next season. You're probably going to have to get rid of Emmanuel Ogbah. You're probably going to have to get rid of Jerome Baker. You're going to have to get rid of Cedric Wilson. I feel like that one's a given, but you have to find a way to get rid of him. And even after that, you're still barely going to have enough space to be able to keep all these other guys. Could you potentially do this? Could you trade Xavier Howard? Well, based on what we're looking at on Over the Cap, the answer to that question is a resounding no. The only way you would be able to really get away with getting rid of Xavier Howard next season is it has to be after June 1st. Either you're going to cut him, which makes about $7.5 million in dead cap and $18.5 million in savings, or you trade him and you get about the same. $7.5 million dead cap, $18.5 million in cap savings, and hopefully some team out there will be willing to take on his contract and say, okay, you can have a third-round draft pick. I'm guessing very conservatively with that because Xavier Howard is getting older. He's still a little bit injury-prone. He gets nicked up sometimes during the season. He hasn't been his super tremendous ultimate Pro Bowl self in a couple of years. So there's probably going to be a team looking like, hey, it's a what have you done lately for me league, and Xavier Howard has not done that much for me lately. Now, if he has an excellent 2023, then obviously that could change. Maybe some team will be out there saying, you know what, sure, we could take Xavier Howard, and you could potentially find a way to keep your hands on Jonathan Taylor that way. You basically give Jonathan Taylor that money. But again, this is the problem. Why did you go ahead and invest in Devon Achane and give all this hype into what he can do and get Mike McDaniel all excited if all you were going to do was go and grab a veteran running back? And Jonathan Taylor is a veteran. Yes, he's 24 years old. He'll be 25 in January. But he's still a veteran running back. He's been in the league. He's going to get paid. And if something happens to him, if he gets injured, he's not Derrick Henry. He's not that much of a freak of nature. He's not like this physical specimen beyond all recognition here. He's a guy. He's another guy who is very athletically gifted, but he's not this physical towering specimen of just muscle like Derrick Henry, who can just hang on there forever and a half. He got hurt already. We know that he's not 100% healthy even right now as we speak. So you're going to give him the biggest running back contract in NFL history? I don't trust that. I feel like the Dolphins have more investment in other locations, and they're going to need to use that investment in other situations. Again, the only way you can get rid of Xavier Howard and not get yourself punished for it, because if you get rid of Xavier Howard before June 1st, then you're shooting yourself in the foot to the tune of $23 million in dead cap space, and you only save about $3 million. You would have to wait until June 1st in order if you're going to get rid of Xavier Howard at this point in 2024. The only ones you can really get away with trading with early on and not getting punished for it, it would be the same candidates. Emmanuel Ogbah, Jerome Baker, Cedric Wilson. I'm trying to go down the list here and see if there's somebody else. Do you think you can get anything for Keon Crossan? You can cut him, sure. But aside from that, what else are you going to accomplish? You could trade Tua. I don't think you want to do that, though, because if you're going to keep Tua, then you probably want to be able to, keep him. He's a good quarterback. And if he has a fantastic 2023, he's a great quarterback. And guess what? You need to pay him too. So that doesn't make any sense either. And you keep going down the list. Are you going to trade Jalen Ramsey 1 year after you got him? No, you're not going to do that. You could save some money with that, but why would you do that? And after that, all those big money contracts, there's no way to really get that extra money. Ogbah, Baker, and Cedric Wilson. Those are your main guys. Everybody else would need to be restructured. So you probably need to try to extend some guys here. Maybe try to restructure Tyreek Hill. Maybe you go ahead and give him some more guaranteed salary. Maybe push the can down the road. See if you can get more cap space out of him somehow. Teron Armstead, maybe restructure him if you want to keep him around. But again, you understand that doing that means it's harder to move off from him later. You already paid Bradley Chubb last season. Where are you going to get this money? You can't. It doesn't make any sense. So for the Miami Dolphins, if I'm them, forget Jonathan Taylor. Raheem Mostert can get the job done. Jeff Wilson can get the job done. Let's see what Devon Achane can do with a year's worth of development. And I'm just looking forward to what we've already seen. We've already seen that this running game is going to work. Or at least in theory it should work because it's already worked in preseason. But this team knows what they're doing with their running backs, I think. And I don't think that it's very fiscally responsible, nor is it worth it at this point to go and get Jonathan Taylor. Sit pat. You had your shot at a Pro Bowl running back without having to give up anything, and you lowballed him. You did that for a reason. You like what you have in your backs already. Let's stay the course, and let's go win a Super Bowl without having to trade for a whole bunch of expensive players at running back. That's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. Tonight, there will be Pulse of Fins Nation. We are aiming for 8 p.m. this time so as to avoid getting in the way of 3 yards per carry. But I digress. You're going to be able to listen to us talk live. You can ask us questions. We'll answer them. And of course, as for always, we thank our sponsors, You Break Wheel Fix. Just reach out to them at 305-748-0112 if you want to give your ride the ultimate Dolphins makeover, or if you want to just get your wheels fixed up. And of course, go to prizepicks.com. They actually went ahead and they have a whole lot of offers for you. They have that free Dak Prescott Square. They have Taco Tuesday promos today. Make sure you're keeping an eye out for all of that stuff. We will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Fins Nation.